to another Beebe Book Buzz. This is a conversation about books with some of your Beebe librarians from the Lucius Beebe Memorial Library. My name is Leanne Ellis. I'm a Reader's Advisory Librarian and a reference librarian there. And with me today is Jackie Powers, who's our Assistant Director, and Karen Stern, who is also a reference librarian, and she also takes care of our programming at the library. So we're going to just start by talking about books, which is one of the things we love to do most of the time anyway. So it's nothing different. We're just in a different spot.
What we sit around and do all day long.
Exactly. So I want to start by talking about Louise Penny's latest book, which came out at the end of August, which was Glass Houses, because I know the three of us have all read it, and there's never
exciting.
more of a joy for any of us when we can talk about books we've actually all read, but also Louise Penny, which most people who know me at all know I'm a huge fan of in general. So I enjoyed the book so much because, as usual, I feel that the character just continued the momentum to wherever they are going, was certainly being done well in this book. So what did you guys think?
I agree with you. I mean, that's what she does so well. And even though I'm not, say, the biggest mystery fan, I just feel like I could read her books all day long because through the whole series, the characters build and build and build. And it doesn't matter if, for me, as you know, if you don't absolutely love every single mystery, because you're always getting that really rich character stuff.
But when she does get the mystery and the character
then
right,
those are the best.
Those are the best, and I think this was one of those.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
one in particular was where the mystery tied in so well with the character development, and it really advanced it, that it all came together, and there was this like wonderful tension the entire time that I couldn't put it down. I read it almost entirely in one day with a couple hours the next day. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah, no, and certainly, yeah, there's action, there's tension, and there's the character. And the character, her best stuff is when she gets the internal dilemmas and problems, really going with a character and a good mystery, and she certainly did that.
Yeah, and she's able to do that with more than one character at a time,
Of
course,
yes.
Ganache being the lead character always is in the throes of a dilemma, but I think she brings in those secondary and tertiary characters and gives you, even the so-called villains, are given wonderful motivations and some great color. There's always something different about them, I think. I think one of the things she did exceptionally well in Glass Houses was build the tone, build that atmosphere, because from the moment you open the pages, you're sort of sucked into this sort of nightmarish quality that sort of is an undertone for the whole book.
It's a darker tone than I think she's taken in some of her books,
right,
especially because Three Pines is it's quaint, and
where they live, it's a very quaint little town. But yeah,
she kind of captured this sort of like darker underbelly without making it. It's certainly not like seedy or scary, but
those are again, I think some of her best ones are where the darkness comes in pretty strongly. But you've still got Three Pines to kind of balance it out, and that was really well done.
And I always see Three Pines as that metaphor of that place you'd like to have exist in your life. A place where you go back and it's full of family and wonderful lattes and wonderful smells coming out of pastries coming out of the auberge, and it's wonderful. And I think that's what she intends actually all along. And I also think that, and I've said this to people before, this, it's wonderful if you can start from the beginning, because she builds character in each and every book, and the first one is called Still Life. But you can start later on in the series.
I did, because Still Life was very much. The first one is very much almost like a cozy. It's very calm. It's very tame in some ways, especially compared to what comes after. And so you guys, I think, were the ones who basically said, okay, it's okay if you skip 2, 3, 3 and 4. I think I came in at 5, and I've never wanted to stop since. In fact, I think 5 through 9 are some of my absolute favorites.
I think the brutal telling.
The brutal telling
is 5. Brutal telling is 5. Yeah.
And I've often said that to people, and then they've come back and said, well, gee, I enjoyed that so much, and I had to go back because I realized that what we were saying about character. Yeah. And I had the great fortune of having to reread them all for a book discussion one summer with my mystery group, and that was a great delight to be able to go back and read it in a different.
Someday I'm going to do that.
It was wonderful because
in my free time.
I kept seeing these little kernels of wonderment in these terrific characters. And I said, oh my gosh, she planted that way back in book 2.
I know.
Right.
And you wouldn't have known that until you saw it come to fruition later on.
Right.
And that was a wonderful thing. So we all belong to her fan club.
We certainly do.
And highly suggest to people that they start reading someplace in that series anyway.
And I think I know we all talk to people, patrons at the library, who have kind of come and gone to the series. There's occasional ones that are A Beautiful Mystery is a little bit more cerebral. It's a slower, the mystery takes the kind of central part of it, but this is one of those where I would recommend, like, if you kind of thought you maybe weren't into it anymore, like, try this one again. Like, try this one. Like, the action really, I think.
She gets it's so well balanced between the action and the mystery and the character development. It's really well done.
Yeah, and don't you think she appeals to a lot of people because there's violence without it being graphic. There's no sex. There's not really much. I mean, there's some swearing, but not much. It's very.
And there's humor too.
And there's
She's
a lot of
funny,
humor.
yeah.
It's. I don't want to say they're tame, but
just Ruth and the Duck alone.
just Ruth and the Duck.
Which, we're not giving anything away. You want to discover that yourself. But seriously, those are nice little pieces that you look forward to every time you pick up the book. Please let there be a Ruth and Duck scene. So yeah. Definitely, I agree with you. And I think that people can read them as standalones because she does such a good job.
She gives you enough.
But one of the reasons she's one of my favorites is she never calls it in. It takes her that full year to write the next book, even though it's very painful to wait for it. And you're never disappointed because all the elements of story come together so well. Character, pace, plot, setting.
Absolutely.
All of those things do. So.
And they just continue to advance. I mean, she really has brought these characters so far, but you never feel like she's dragging anything out.
No,
like
that's what's
they each
amazing.
move.
How many books? Is this 13?
13, I think.
13 books, and she hasn't it hasn't fallen flat.
No. There hasn't been one that disappointed me. That's for sure.
No, there's certainly some you enjoy more or less than others, but there's always a purpose. Even I think some of the slower ones that I was talking about, those are intended to advance the character, and they really always do. They build the characters, that trajectory, and then sets it up for the next book. And I think they do. She does a great job of that.
As the series progressed, the psychological thriller aspect, drama certainly did, but certainly does. But also the philosophical, ruminations that take place because of these incredible moral decisions that have to
Certainly,
be made.
in this one, there's a big moral dilemma.
Yes, huge,
big one.
And I think but it never takes over. I have never felt, gosh, this is going on too long. Some authors don't know when to stop it or how they don't integrate it as well. So, yeah, definitely. Well, we could go on for the entire half
Speaking of
hour.
knowing when to stop, maybe we should stop now.
We should probably stop and talk about a few other things that we're reading. So, Karen, why don't you share something that you've been reading with us?
I recently read You Don't Have to Say You Love Me by Sherman Alexie, who people may know from Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. He made a movie, Smoke Signals, which was based on another one of his books, which name is just escaping me right now. But he's an American Indian author, so self-described. And this is a memoir, and it's beautifully done, it's beautifully crafted, it's very much focused on his relationship with his mother and his family in general, but it's also very much about life on the reservation. Very, eye-opening for those of us who don't know anyone or haven't experienced that ourselves. There's a lot in there about that life and the hardships of it, and it's built around this metaphor. His mother was a quilt maker, and she did that partly just to keep the family alive. But she, so the book is a quilt, essentially. It's based on, it's in small sections mostly, and the beginning is a little bit of exposition, but then there'll be a poem, and he's very, very funny. So even, people say, oh no, not poetry, but it's good, hard-hitting, funny stuff. And then there'll be a little essay, and then there'll be, something else. And so it's this patchwork that becomes it builds his life. It becomes this quilt of his life. And there are repetitions, as there are in quilts, and sometimes so he'll take a story and he'll tell it again, and you'll think, wow, I think I heard this before, and then, but he'll just move it along in a slightly different way or take it off on a slightly different trajectory, and all of this goes back and forth, to his relationship with his mother, who was very difficult. She was very. It was a brutal relationship, I would say, not necessarily physically, but in almost every other way. And yet he loves her as we love our parents, and he's mourning her. She's just died 2 years ago. And so it's very, it's hard-hitting, but beautifully done, and you learn a lot, and you empathize with a lot of, what
I
our
think
parents.
what's difficult about memoir for some people is the accessibility to it, in the sense that initially when you open the book and you start to read a memoir, if you're not immediately enveloped in that voice, that life, it's very difficult to sometimes get into it. I know people who won't read memoir for that reason alone.
Right. He's a storyteller, and he starts right off by saying he might be a bit of a liar. He draws you right in.
Reliable?
Yeah, and because that's part of his mother's theme too. One of the things that he struggled with so much with her was the lies that she told them, and so but there's something intriguing about that, right? When you first you open up and you're like, I'm telling you this story, but it might not be true. I don't know what part's true and what part's not. You're going to have to kind of figure that out for yourself. And he does that with his other books too. I mean, Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian is called that because it's not absolutely true. It's his story, it's his growing up story, but it's fictionalized, and you don't really know which parts are and which parts aren't.
Yeah.
He likes to play around with that stuff. So I think it's not dry in any way, shape, or form. The one slight criticism I might have is that in this repetition and the patchwork, there's a little bit of maybe. There were times when I thought, okay, maybe I didn't need that particular repetition again. So, it could have been maybe a little bit tighter, but then I think about it and I'm like, well, who's, intensely personal short, it's a story of their life, who's going to make it tight? Who am I to ask them to be tight?
Because it's your story.
This is his story, and this is
well,
the
and
way
the
he
fact
wants to
that he's
tell it.
repeating certain things may be an indication of some of the things he's trying to work on here. Because I do
Exactly.
think that's what memoir does as well. You're working on something.
Well, and it sounds like he did that. I mean, he's still working through a lot of this.
He's still working through it, and in fact, he's just on his website. He has just canceled his book tour because it's become too much for him to do.
Wow.
So it's it's very honest and very emotionally charged.
She just died.
She died
relatively recently.
2015, like 2 and a bit years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, this is quite a quick book to come up with.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, he must obviously used it as therapy.
Yes, and you get that feeling for sure.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, he is one of those writers. When you're writing, you mention his poetry in your laugh out loud. He's laugh out loud funny.
Oh, he's so funny. I mean, he was a stand-up comic.
Yeah,
I mean,
I did not
he's
know
that
that.
kind of funny.
Yes,
I've heard interviews with him. He's very entertaining.
very tongue in cheek most of the time
Oh,
too.
and just ripping wit. I mean, like can go right through you. And again, that's his mother. Like he said, all the things that he is, the storyteller, the liar, the wit, all of that is from her. And this is why this is so painful for him.
His fictional books mostly young adult, but he's done a little bit of both, right?
Not really, not exactly. I mean, I would say they're all crossovers, honestly. I think they kind of got, because it was a teenage story, the Absolutely True Diary, it got billed as a young adult, but you can read that as an adult. I think we did it. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
No, I agree with you. I think it's one of those books that crosses over. And it is funny because when I'm on my soapbox, and usually I am on a soapbox, I noticed that people, when I talk to them about nonfiction, they have a lot of people don't want to read memoir at all. And I think it's interesting because memoir is a slice of someone's life. It's not the entire story, like an autobiography or a biography is. It's not intended to be. And it's interpreted by the person writing the book about this particular event. So the events are either true or they're not, based on their point of view, based on what they know, based on what they decide they want to know, all of that stuff. But what I think memoir does in the nonfiction catalog, so to speak, is speak about emotional truth in a way that fiction does.
Right, exactly.
Because I think there are forms of fiction that sort of...
It's your kind of personal fiction.
Exactly.
Well, we all have stories that we tell about ourselves, and they change. They might change over the years.
And
but
they get interpreted.
But and they get reinterpreted.